Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games. I mean, wow, talk about a world that just grabs you from page one and doesn't let go.
No kidding. It's intense. And that's exactly why we're here today.
For this deep dive into the heart of Panem.
You got it. We're going to unpack those crucial early chapters, the ones that set the stage for everything that comes after. We want to dig into District 12, really get a feel for what life is like for Katniss before the games even begin, and then, of course, we'll follow her right into the arena.
But we're not just going to recap the plot, right?
No way. We want to uncover those little details, those hidden gems that Collins sprinkles throughout those first few chapters.
The stuff that makes you think, whoa, I didn't catch that before.
Exactly, because those details, they're the key to understanding the brutal reality of Panem and the very core of Katniss's fight for survival.
Okay, so let's start with the District 12. It's not exactly a vacation destination.
Not even close. Collins paints this incredibly vivid picture of a place where hardship is woven into the very fabric of life.
Yeah, like the seam. It's not just poverty. It's like this ingrained, almost like a stain that can't be washed away.
That's a great way to put it. It's like the coal dust itself becomes a symbol of their struggle, something that clings to them no matter how hard they try to scrub it off.
And then you've got that supposedly electrified fence surrounding the district, meant to keep the dangers of the woods at bay. But it's often powerless, right?
Right, which speaks volumes about the district's lack of resources. Like, they can't even keep the electricity running consistently. But that failing fence is also what gives Katniss a way out.
That loose section she uses to slip into the woods, a world that's both dangerous and her only source of real sustenance.
It's fascinating how Collins doesn't romanticize that part of the story at all. She's not afraid to show the raw, brutal side of survival.
Those woods are not exactly a walk in the park.
Not even close. Packs of wild dogs, cougars, bears, you name it. And then there's the constant worry about rabies. There are no clear paths, no safety nets. It's just raw wilderness.
And Katniss is out there facing those dangers head on because she has to, because of what happened to her father in the mines.
That mine explosion, it's a constant shadow hanging over her. And that recurring nightmare she has, the one where her family starves, it just underscores the trauma that drives her, that fierce determination to protect her mother and Prim from ever experiencing that kind of loss.
It's not just about feeding them, is it? It's about shielding them from the kind of despair that could break them. And then there's that whole other layer of fear, the one that exists within District 12 itself.
The fear of being watched, of saying the wrong thing. The Capitol's presence is always there, even in the supposed privacy of their homes.
It's like this invisible hand pressing down on them. Katniss talks about wearing an indifferent mask when she's out in the woods, even when she thinks she's alone.
It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect herself and her family from the prying eyes of the Capitol.
And then there's the Hob.
Yeah.
This whole underground black market that exists because the Capitol's official systems are so utterly broken.
Right. They can't rely on the government to provide for them, so they create their own economy. And Katniss, with her hunting skills, she's able to carve out a space for herself in that world. It's where she turns her ability to survive into actual sustenance for her family.
And then we meet Gale. It's
like looking in a mirror, almost.
Yeah. The similar features, even though they're not related, that shared darkness in their hair and eyes, it's striking.
And their hunting partnership, it goes beyond just shared skills, you know? It's a bond forged in necessity, a way to support each other's families in this incredibly harsh environment.
And they have this conversation about escaping District 12. It's like this brief flicker of hope, this dream of a different life.
A life where their skills could actually guarantee their survival, not just a constant struggle.
But the reality of their responsibilities, Gale's family, Katniss's mother, and Prim, it weighs them down.
It makes that dream seem almost impossible.
And you see this contrast in their views on the future, too. Katniss, she's so adamant about never having children.
Which makes perfect sense, given what she's seen and experienced.
Right. But Gale, he's more open to the idea, but only if we could get somewhere safe.
It highlights how deeply their environment has shaped their perspectives, their hopes, their fears.
And I love that little detail about the bread Gale brings back. Real bakery bread, not those gritty rations they usually have.
Right. Like the way Katniss describes the aroma, it's a reminder of how much they've been deprived of, even simple pleasures.
And then there's that dark humor they share about the Hunger Games, mimicking Effie Trinket's Happy Hunger Games catchphrase.
This is their way of coping, right, of facing this terrifying reality with a bit of, well, I guess you could call it defiance.
But then we come to the Tesserae system. And it's a cruel
It's gonna
suit,
craze on the most vulnerable people in District 12.
forcing them to choose between starvation and putting their children's names in for the reaping more times.
And it's a trap, really. It keeps them dependent on the capital, reinforces their powerlessness.
By 16, Katniss has her name in 20 times. 20.
And Gale, with his larger family, he has 42 entries. It's staggering.
And it makes you understand why there's this resentment towards those who don't have to take Tesserae, like Madge.
It exposes the deep divisions that the capital creates and perpetuates.
And then Reaping Day arrives. It's like this wave of dread washes over District 12.
The streets are empty, the windows are shuttered. It's like the whole community is holding its breath.
Even in Katniss's preparations, you see that weight bearing down on them. Prim's little gift of goat cheese wrapped in basil leaves, her mom laying out that one nice dress.
It's heartbreaking, really. They're clinging to these small bits of normalcy, of dignity, in the face of this horrific event.
And the ceremony itself is so cold, so impersonal, the way they call out the ages, the increasing number of entries with each passing year.
20 slips of paper with Katniss's name, 42 with Gale's.
And then Effie Trinket arrives, all smiles and bright colors.
With that ridiculously cheerful Happy Hunger Games and her capital accent.
It's almost grotesque, the contrast between her demeanor and the gravity of the situation.
Even the mayor seems distressed, like he can barely contain his own anxiety.
And then
Prim's name.
it's like time stops, just this tiny slip of paper with her little sister's name on it.
And the crowd reacts, right? There's this murmur of discontent. No one wants to see a 12-year-old sent to the games. But it's Katniss who, well, she just explodes.
That cry of Prim, and then without hesitation, I volunteer.
It's so raw, so visceral. You can feel her desperation, her absolute determination to protect Prim, no matter the cost.
It's a decision that changes everything.
And then we meet Peeta Mellark.
He's described as kind of average-looking, medium height, stocky build, ashy blonde hair, but there's this look of alarm in his blue eyes.
Like he's just as stunned by what's happening as everyone else.
And in that moment, Katniss is flooded with memories of Prim, of becoming the head of the family when she was only 11.
The fear of the community home, the thought of Prim being subjected to that kind of harsh environment, it's unbearable to her.
And Prim, she's so small, so gentle, brushing their mother's hair, polishing their father's mirror. Those tiny details just make her even more precious.
That flashback to Katniss starving, her encounter with the baker's wife in Peeta. It's such a pivotal moment, isn't it?
The baker's wife is initially so harsh, so dismissive.
But then Peeta burns those loaves of bread and gives them to Katniss. It's this act of incredible kindness, this tiny spark of hope in this incredibly bleak world.
And the fact that he shows up bruised the next day, it suggests that he was punished for helping her.
And then there's the dandelion, that image of it pushing through the cracked earth. It gives Katniss this idea, this realization that survival is possible, even in the most desolate of circumstances.
It's like that dandelion becomes a symbol of her own resilience. And in the aftermath of volunteering, you see Katniss taking control, giving those instructions to her mother and Prim.
No more Tesserae for Prim. Relying on the goat for milk and cheese.
Trusting Gale to provide through trade. And that plea to her mother, you can't leave again. It's raw, it's desperate.
It speaks volumes about the fragility of their family unit.
But even in that darkness, there are these small acts of kindness. The baker, he brings us cookies.
And promises to watch over Prim.
And Madge, she gives Katniss that Mockingjay pin.
A symbol that will become so significant later on.
And that kiss. It's a gesture of solidarity, of support. And then there's Gale's embrace. This deep, unspoken understanding between them.
It's not romantic, but it's incredibly powerful.
And then the journey to the capital, it's like they're being transported to another planet.
It's overwhelming.
Watching the reapings from the other districts, seeing those other tributes, it's a stark reminder of the scope of this whole barbaric ritual.
That boy from District 2, so physically imposing. The fox-faced girl from District 5, all cunning and sharp edges.
The boy with the crippled foot from District 10, and then that 12-year-old girl from District 11.
So small, so fragile, just like Prim.
It's daunting. And then there's Haymitch, their mentor. Drunk as a skunk on the train.
Not exactly inspiring confidence, is he?
But the capital itself. It's sensory overload.
Effie, she's just gushing over everything.
And that crystal elevator.
A far cry from the rickety one back in District 12.
And the electricity. It's everywhere. Blaring lights, moving walkways.
Hate it. He makes this comment about how he wishes he could just take it all back home.
Like he's aware of the disparity of how much his district is lacking, and then he starts talking about the food, how amazing it is.
It's like he's trying to play the game to fit in.
And then he mentions Gale and remembers Katniss's father bringing her cookies, and then he drops this bombshell that his father knew Katniss's mother.
It's like these little pieces of their shared history start to come together.
Okay, so now we're in the Capitol, and Katniss is being prepped for the games.
And the prep team, Vania, Flavius, Octavia, they're all about appearances.
Like, obsessed with making her look perfect. But then there's Cinna, and he's different.
He's not just focused on the superficial. He sees Katniss, understands the power of image.
And Haymitch, he gives her that cryptic advice. Don't resist.
It's not immediately clear what he means, but it's like he's telling her to play along, to use the Capitol's expectations to her advantage.
And then Cinna creates the Girl on Fire costume.
Wow, what a moment.
It's stunning, and it instantly creates this narrative for Katniss, this image that sets her apart from the other tributes.
Effie is ecstatic. She knows how important first impressions are in the Capitol.
And then we get to the training center. It's where the tributes get to showcase their skills.
And Katniss, well, she's a natural with a bow and arrow.
But the game makers, they're initially dismissive. So she does this incredible thing.
She shoots an arrow right into the apple in the pig's mouth on their roast.
It's like, hey, pay attention to me.
And it works. They're totally shocked. And then there's the anticipation of the training scores.
Katniss thinks she's going to get a low score after her little stunt with the apple.
But then she gets an 11.
It's huge. It completely changes the game. And then the interviews.
Hosted by Caesar Flickerman, the ultimate Capitol showman.
And Cinna, he gives Katniss this great advice. They already love you. Just be yourself.
It's a reminder that her authenticity, her genuineness, is what resonates with the audience.
And her dress for the interview, another masterpiece by Cinna. It literally goes up in flames.
Reinforcing that girl on fire image.
And Caesar asks her about volunteering for Prim, and Katniss, she just lets her emotions flow.
The audience is captivated.
And then Peeta, he drops this bombshell. He confesses his love for Katniss.
The audience goes wild.
And Haymitch, he says, you're golden, sweetheart. He knows that they've just created this irresistible narrative.
The star-crossed lovers from District 12.
Katniss is completely confused, and later, when she talks to Portia and Haymitch about it,
They explain that it's all part of the game, that this romance angle will make them more appealing to sponsors.
the night before the games, Katniss is a wreck. She can't sleep. She's anxious.
The thought of the arena is terrifying.
She goes up to the roof, and she runs into Peeta.
They talk about District 12, about his mother. It's a surprisingly tender moment.
And Peeta tells her he hopes she comes home.
But Katniss, she's skeptical. She doesn't know she can trust him.
And then the arena.
It's time.
They get those tracker injections.
A chilling reminder that they're being monitored, controlled.
And Haymitch gives Katniss his final advice. Run, find water, the rest will follow.
Simple, but crucial.
They're standing on those metal plates, the cornucopia in front of them.
60 seconds.
The tension is unbearable.
And the cornucopia itself, it's a symbol of both temptation and danger.
All those supplies. But to get them, they have to fight.
Katniss quickly assesses the arena. The open ground, the possible cliff, the lake, those piney woods. She decides to follow Haymitch's advice.
To run.
The gong sounds.
And the 74th Hunger Games begin.
So we've just witnessed this incredible journey, from the desperate poverty and resilience of the scene to the spectacle and terror of the arena.
Katniss has faced so much loss, so much hardship, yet she keeps fighting.
She has this unwavering determination to protect those she loves.
And now she's thrown into this brutal competition where survival is the only goal.
It makes you wonder, what choices will she make in that arena? What sacrifices will she be forced to contemplate?
What does true courage look like in the face of such unimaginable adversity? You know how she reacts emotionally to just the craziness of that situation?
Right.
And you know what key relationships she forms.
Yeah.
In those first really terrifying days in the games.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully kind of paint a clear picture of how those early days shape her.
Exactly. I think that's key because she comes from such a specific background, right?
Right.
You know, District 12, this really harsh reality, and then she's thrust into this completely manufactured environment.
Right.
It's lethal. It's designed to be entertaining.
Right.
So seeing, which instincts help her and where she has to adapt, that's fascinating.
Totally. Yeah, so let's just dive right into it. Like that moment, they're all standing on those metal plates, waiting for that gong, and there's the cornucopia just overflowing with supplies.
Oh, yeah, it's like this huge golden horn just piled high with everything.
Right.
Food, water, weapons, even medicine, you name it.
It's almost like a taunt,
Oh, totally.
Like, here's everything you need,
yeah,
but you got to fight for it.
exactly. And that 60 seconds, you're just standing there, knowing it's about to go down. That's a weapon in itself.
Right.
It makes you confront, like, your deepest fears and needs right there in the open.
Yeah, and amidst all of that, Haymitch gives Katniss that really simple instruction.
Oh, yeah.
Run, find water.
Right.
And it's so interesting to me because it seems so basic.
Wow.
But it really speaks to a much deeper understanding of survival.
It does. It's like he's distilling years of, Victor's knowledge into those 3 words.
Right.
Like, that's what really matters in the long run.
Exactly.
Not the shiny weapons or the fancy food. It's water.
Yeah, and she makes this split-second decision.
Right.
She bolts for the woods.
Yeah.
I mean, she turns away from all of those supplies.
Yeah, which takes serious guts.
Right.
And I think it speaks volumes about her.
Really, yeah.
It's not about grabbing everything in sight.
Yeah.
It's about making smart choices and thinking long term.
And the sources really emphasize that initial arena is so open.
It is.
Around the cornucopia, and the woods are right there.
Right there beckoning.
Yeah. And so that decision to run to the trees, I think that really shows us how she sees survival.
It's like she understands instinctively the need for cover and the resources that the woods can offer.
Exactly.
That kind of echoes her life in District 12, too.
Right.
Hunting beyond the fence.
Yeah.
Learning to be resourceful, to rely on herself.
Yeah. And to be patient.
Yeah, to not just jump at the first shiny thing she sees.
Right.
Which so many of the other tributes do.
Yeah.
They get caught up in that initial bloodbath.
Right.
And she avoids that, which is huge.
But that decision, to go for the woods immediately puts her in this other really intense situation.
Oh, yeah.
She desperately needs water.
Yeah, she's parched.
The sources really highlight that, how she's just struggling to find even a drop.
Yeah, and that's so deliberate on the part of the game makers.
Right.
They control the environment, They can make water scarce to drive the tributes to certain areas.
Right.
Force them to clash.
To create conflict for the viewers back in the Capitol.
Exactly. It's all part of the show.
Right.
And in this moment, you see Katniss drawing on all her knowledge about plants.
Right.
Which she learned from her father.
Yeah.
It shows how valuable those seemingly small schools can be.
Uh-huh.
But there's always that risk.
Yeah.
One wrong berry and it's all over.
And on top of all that, she's got this other problem.
Right.
She needs water, but she knows the career tributes are probably already camped out.
Oh, yeah. They're going to go for the obvious sources.
Right, by the lake.
The lake, yeah.
Where it's easy to get to.
Right.
And the sources really highlight that internal struggle for her.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to weigh the risks and the rewards.
Exactly. Like, is the risk of encountering them worth the reward of getting water?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because on top of that, she's also thinking about PETA.
Right.
It's not just about her survival.
Yeah.
She made a promise to Prim.
Yeah, to come home.
Yeah, and then there's PETA.
And that act of kindness, back in District 12.
The bread.
Yeah, it's like that weighs on her.
It does. It's this little flicker of humanity.
Right.
In the midst of all this barbarity.
Exactly.
And it shows how those small gestures can really stay with you.
And potentially change the course of things.
Absolutely, because it starts to make her question things,
Right.
Like, is it just about every man for himself? Or is there room for something more?
Right.
Even in the games.
Yeah, and just when she's dealing with all of that, the dehydration, the isolation, the game makers decide to throw in another wrench.
Oh, yeah.
They unleash this crazy wall of fire.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere.
It's so unnatural.
Right.
And so terrifying. I think it really shows how much control they have over the arena.
Oh, totally.
And how little regard they have for the tributes.
They don't care about their safety or their plans.
Right. It's all about creating a good show for the Capitol.
Exactly. If things are getting slow,
right,
they'll spice things up.
Drive the tributes together.
Yeah, force some conflict.
And for Katniss, it's just pure terror.
Oh, yeah. She's running for her life.
She gets burned pretty badly.
Yeah, the sources detail how bad it is.
Yeah, and it makes her even more desperate for water.
Right. She's in a really bad way.
And then out of this incredibly vulnerable moment,
Yeah.
She forms this alliance with Rue.
Yeah, it's unexpected.
It is, yeah.
But it makes sense in a way.
Right.
They're both hurt.
Yeah.
They need each other.
And Rue knows about these healing leaves.
Yeah, which is huge for Katniss.
It is, yeah. It gives her a chance to recover.
Yeah, and it creates this bond between them.
Right.
One that's based on mutual need and trust.
Which is so different from how Katniss was operating before.
It is. It's a huge shift from that lone wolf mentality.
Right.
And I think it really speaks to something fundamental about being human.
Yeah.
Even in the worst situations.
Yeah.
We crave connection.
We need it. Yeah.
We need it.
Mm-hmm.
And Rue, with her, small size and her innocence, she really reminds Katniss of Prim.
Yeah, and the sources really play that up.
They do.
You know how Katniss feels this need to protect her?
Yeah, it's that big sister instinct kicking in.
Exactly, and Rue, she's so resourceful, too.
Oh, she knows the arena like the back of her hand.
Right, she grew up in District 11,
Yep, work in the fields.
Climb trees.
Yeah, she's nimble, she's quick, she's observant.
And she comes up with this brilliant plan to attack the career tribute supplies.
Which seems impossible.
It does, yeah, but they work together.
They do.
And it's all based on trust and communication. Rue sets these signal fires as a distraction.
Yeah, drawing the careers away.
And Katniss is able to sneak in.
And use her bow and arrows.
Yeah, even with that ear injury.
Yeah, which is no small feat.
Right, to blow up their supplies.
It's a huge blow to the careers.
It is, yeah. It's like this moment of triumph.
Yeah, they outsmarted the bigger, stronger tributes.
And then it's just snatched away.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, yeah. Katniss is looking for Rue after the explosion, and she finds her caught in a net.
Yeah, fatally wounded.
By Marvel.
Yeah.
And it's just devastating.
It is. You can feel Katniss's grief just pouring out of the pages.
Right.
And what she does next.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
She covers Rue in flowers.
Yeah, and sings to her.
Until she dies.
Yeah, it's this incredibly tender moment.
Yeah.
This act of defiance against the cruelty of the games.
Right. She refuses to let Rue just become another casualty.
Exactly. She gives her dignity, and she honors her memory.
And then the gift from District 11.
Oh, yeah.
That loaf of bread.
Yeah, sent as a tribute to both of them.
It's so significant.
It is. It shows how deeply their alliance resonated.
Right.
Beyond the arena.
Yeah, with the other district.
Took like this spark of solidarity against the Capitol.
And then out of nowhere comes this rule change.
Oh.
They announced that 2 victors can win.
From the same district.
From the same district if they're the last 2 standing.
Right.
And the sources all point out that Katniss immediately thinks of Peeta.
Yeah, it's like this beacon of hope.
It is, yeah.
Suddenly there's a chance.
Right. And it's another example of the game makers manipulating things.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Maybe they saw how the audience reacted to Rue's death.
Right. Maybe they wanted to soften the blow.
Or maybe they just wanted to create more drama.
Probably both.
Yeah, probably. But for Katniss, it changes everything.
It does.
She's not just fighting for herself anymore.
Wait, she's got to find Peeta.
And she uses all of her hunting skills.
You're tracking him down.
And he's badly injured.
Yeah, his leg is messed up.
And the text really goes into detail about how Katniss tries to care for him.
Yeah, with her limited knowledge.
Yeah.
But it's enough.
It is, yeah. And it's so interesting because it flips their dynamic.
Right.
She was the provider before.
Yeah, the hunter.
And now she's the caregiver.
And Peeta, even though he's injured, he provides emotional support.
Right.
He keeps her going.
And they become even more dependent on each other.
Yeah, their bond deepens.
And then comes the feast.
Oh, yeah.
This event where they lure the tributes out.
The things they desperately need.
Yeah, Katniss goes for the medicine for Peeta, and it's a trap.
Of course it's a trap. It's the Hunger Games.
Right.
Nothing is easy.
And Clove attacks her.
Yeah, and the sources really highlight how brutal it is.
And how personal it is.
Yeah, she's taunting Katniss about Rue.
And you can see how much that still hurts.
Oh, yeah, it's like a fresh wound.
Right, and then Thresh intervenes.
Which is so unexpected.
And it is, yeah.
Because he could have killed her.
He could have.
But he spares her.
Because of what she did for Rue.
Yeah, it's like this act of mercy.
It's a moment of grace.
Yeah, in this incredibly brutal setting.
It shows that even in the games,
yeah,
compassion can exist.
It can. And it can have a ripple effect.
Right.
Like it did with Thresh.
And then we get to the final showdown with Cato.
Yeah, the last 3 tributes.
All of them just exhausted and desperate. The sources really paint a picture of how brutal this fight is.
Yeah, they're all at their breaking point.
And Peeta gets injured again.
Yeah, his leg.
And Cato.
He ends up getting mauled by those mutated creatures.
Yeah, those mutts.
It's a gruesome way to go.
It is, yeah. And then comes the announcement.
Yeah, that Katniss and Peeta have won.
But then they take it back.
Oh, yeah. That's such a cruel twist.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Like, they give them this hope, and then they yank it away.
It's like the ultimate manipulation.
It is, and it forces them into this impossible situation.
Yeah.
They have to fight each other.
And Katniss refuses.
Yeah, she pulls out those nightlock berries.
Offering them to Peeta.
Yeah, double suicide.
Right, and it's this incredibly powerful act of rebellion.
It is. She's calling their bluff.
Yeah.
Saying, I won't pull your game.
And it works.
They have to declare them both victors.
Because they can't let them both die.
Right. It would be a PR nightmare.
Exactly.
And it shows that even in this incredibly controlled environment, the tributes have some agency.
They can make choices.
Choices that have real consequences.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that Katniss's early experiences in the games are crucial.
Absolutely.
You know, her resourcefulness, her ability to form alliances, her connection with Peeta.
Yeah, those are the things that get her through.
And they lay the groundwork for everything that comes after.
They do.
You know how she navigates the Capitol?
Yeah, how she becomes this symbol of rebellion.
Right. And I think it's really interesting to consider how those early interventions by the game makers, you know, they were trying to create a spectacle, but they also unintentionally created these moments of genuine connection and resistance.
Yeah, they underestimated the power of human emotion.
And the impact it would have on the viewers.
Exactly.
So I guess what we're left with is this question for you, our listeners.
Yeah.
How do you think these early events shaped Katniss's view of the Capitol and her place in Panem?
Yeah, because it's clear that she's changed.
Right.
She's not the same girl who walked into the arena.
Exactly.
She's been through something horrific.
Yeah.
But she's come out stronger and more determined.
And more aware.
Yeah, more aware of the injustice of it all.
Right. And that sets the stage for the rest of her story.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Into the beginning of the Hunger Games. Until next time.